Hey everybody, Rich here, South Florida Beekeeping with Rich. Got a talkie for you today. Won't keep you too long, I promise. Um, but it's apparent that from some of the comments we've gotten, that there's some confusion about vinegar and smoke, creosote, and all this stuff tied together. So I'm going to tie some of that together for you. And while we're on the topic of vinegar, I'm going to also make reference to a couple of other things that we have talked about before. But let's get started. So one person was very concerned because they were under the impression that creosote is a carcinogen. And he was felt that we might be exposing ourselves to a carcinogen by mixing, the tars out of your smoker with the apple cider or with the white vinegar. Okay. So I did some more research. So here we have a fact sheet on creosote from the University of Virginia. And it turns out there's two different kinds of creosote. There's coal tar creosote and there's wood creosote, and they have very different properties. The studies that I could find about that apparently are the basis of saying that it's possible that there's a carcinogenic relationship with creosote were done from coal tar creosote. Okay, and I don't know some of the details of that. I do remember back when I was in high school and they suddenly came out with the fact that if you drank sassafras tea, you were going to give yourself cancer. And the studies that were done, it turned out you would have to drink more than 50 gallons a day of sassafras tea if you were going to get the kind of effect that they got on the mice that they gave this stuff to. So wasn't really too worried about it from that standpoint to start with, but you're going to see why I'm even less worried about it at this point. Doing some more research into it on wood creosote, it turns out that wood creosote distills between 200 and 220 degrees centigrade, so well over twice the boiling point of water to actually get creosote off of anything. And what I was mentioning to you was to cold soak your smoker lid overnight. Just cold soak it in the vinegar. Remember, this vinegar, cleaning vinegar, household vinegar, is 95% water, 5% vinegar. And the vinegar has nothing to do with the absorption of the smoke particles. It's just the water. It's just water dissolves some of this, and it gives you a smoky scent to your vinegar. That's all it is. This is not apple cider vinegar. That's not apple cider vinegar. This is just regular white vinegar that you put smoke in. You do not have to do this. This is what I was originally shown to do. Just put straight up white vinegar on your arms and it keeps the bees at bay. I just like to do it with the smoke because I figure if I do get stung and I squirt myself down again with some vinegar that has some smoke in it, it's going to help to mask the pheromone, the banana smell. And as far as I can tell, it works just fine that way. I get stung in the hand, I spray this, I keep right on working. No more bees are attracted to my hand. Okay, so there's that part of it. But it actually turns out it's more to it than that. Assuming I was making a solution that used wood-based creosote, turns out creosote is used as an external antiseptic, an expectorant, a gastric sedative, a deodorant, and in the use of in veterinary medicine, it's a parasiticide in the form of creosote carbonate. It's also used in the synthesis of vanillin. So your fake vanilla extract is made from wood creosote as well. Think we can pretty safely say that what we're doing here is pretty safe. If you want to go ahead and put some tars from your smoker lid into your white vinegar. Okay? I think we can kind of like pound that into the ground. You're not going to have any reason to be concerned about there being any more toxicity from the wood smoke flavoring in here than there would be just from straight up vinegar, which is 0. Spraying bees with vinegar, which has come up. There's 2 ways to look at that. And the first thing I'm going to look at is Dr. Umberto Boncristofori. He is a researcher who does stuff with commercial beekeepers. And a beekeeper who keeps 10,000 hives talked to him to one side one day and said that I spray my bees with apple cider vinegar. Now, terminology here. If you say I spray my frames with vinegar, that means, to my way of thinking, that you shook the bees off and you sprayed the frame. And if you said I spray my bees with vinegar, it means that you held the frame with the bees on it and you gave them a squirt of apple cider vinegar. 2 different things, both of which apparently are pretty much okay. The vinegar, white vinegar or apple cider vinegar, either one, sprayed directly on frames that don't have bees on them, would have an antiseptic effect that would not be problematic. I point you to the fact that the University of Florida, they take a 10% Clorox solution, dip frames in that, give them a shake, and put them right back in, and the bees don't care. How much less are they going to care about this? Bees are used to dealing with acidic conditions because honey can be down around 4 with no problem at all. 4 to 6 is about average for most honeys. Bees are used to acid conditions, and this apparently doesn't bother them much. And let's say Dr. Boncristiani started researching it, and what he found was that acidic conditions down around the 2.5 that vinegar has can break open the cell walls of a number of viruses. And so there could actually be an effect on slow bee paralysis, sac brood, or deformed wing virus. We don't know. There hasn't been any kind of control. This is what you call anecdotal. This beekeeper does this, and he has no numbers. His mite counts aren't affected by this. It certainly has nothing to do with the mites per se. I spray my bees with apple cider vinegar and it gets rid of mites. No, nobody's saying anything like that. But he just feels anecdotally like the yards that he has sprayed with apple cider vinegar do better than the yards he hasn't sprayed with it. And it's nothing he can put his finger on. But it is an area which invites a whole lot more research. We hope that the research gets done. We hope that we find out that apple cider vinegar is as good for the bees as it is for us otherwise. So let's take a look at this from a different direction. You type in, how do you kill bees? And you'll get 10,000 hits that tell you to spray bees with apple cider vinegar to kill them.
That's regular vinegar.
I'm sorry, regular vinegar. Well, either one. Apple cider, regular vinegar. They're both 2.5%. The flavor has nothing to do with it. They'll tell you this. But then when you read a little further, you'll find that it's, you put this apple cider vinegar in water and you spray the bees with it, and when they fall out of the air, you step on them. I'm afraid that the active ingredient here is the sole of your foot. It's not the apple cider vinegar or white vinegar, whichever. It's got nothing to do with it. Or it's you put a cup of apple cider vinegar in a gallon of water and you put in a couple of tablespoons of liquid dish soap. Now that does kill bees. That's exactly how we kill bees a lot of times. If you want to do it in an environmentally friendly way, knock them out of the high combs that are up in an attic or someplace. You can't get to them otherwise. Yes, you do spray bees with a mixture of dish soap and water. A couple of tablespoons per gallon will do it just fine. But again, you put the vinegar in there for no reason. And as far as the bees, oh, maybe the smell of the vinegar repels the bees. Well, they didn't really address that so much, but I can address that because the original recipe that I was given for making my damp sugar. Now, you'll note on my channel when I talked about making my damp sugar, I said use 1/3 of a cup of lemon juice. Well, the original recipe that came to me was to use 1/3 of a cup of apple cider vinegar. And I got to tell you, the bees did love that just fine. Okay? I used lemon juice because, well, a week or so after using that, I was out and I was checking some frames and I could smell the slight vinegar smell in the open nectar. And it's like, whew, I don't want any of that stuff to get capped and have, vinegar honey. I like vinegar and honey, but not like that. So I switched over to using lemon juice because lemon juice is actually slightly more acidic than vinegar. It's 2, whereas vinegar, the 5% white vinegar is 2.5, and lemon juice has a pH of 2. Okay, so 1/3 of a cup in 4 pounds of sugar did just fine, and that way I could go ahead and put in a little bit of Honeybee Healthy, which just never really occurred to me when I was using just straight apple cider vinegar that I could put something else in there. And I'm not sure just how those two would go together. I just never did it myself. Try it if you want. But I found a study done by a gentleman who put a cup of vinegar, of apple cider vinegar, in the 4 pounds of sugar, and the bees rejected it. And he put a half a cup, and the bees accepted it just fine. And like I said, I do 1/3 of a cup. Well, somewhere between that half a cup and the cup was just more than the bees wanted. Okay? But that's about it for that part of it. You're fine if you use apple cider vinegar. Now, one of the things they say about using apple cider vinegar up north is that it can cause dysentery in the bees, basically. And I thought, ooh about that. And then one day it suddenly occurred to me, wait a minute, I'm in South Florida. My bees fly 365. Even on the coldest day of the year here, the bees just don't fly until after 10 o'clock. And they're flying just fine. And this is, after all, a South Florida beekeeping channel. A little bit of dysentery is never a good thing, but a little bit of dysentery in our bees down here doesn't end up fouling the hive or anything like that. So not really a big issue except for yellow spots on your car. So I know this is kind of wandering around a bit. Sorry. If you want the whole story behind spraying bees with vinegar, I would suggest Honeybee Sweet with Rusty Burlow. She did an episode about 4 months ago that was about this topic. All right. Now, let's see. We're down here. We're past the honeybees are good for it. Spraying bees with vinegar is done. The pH. Yeah, there we go. So someone mentioned that they thought that they had damaged their bees with, well, basically spraying with the vinegar. And here's the thing. Formic Pro has a pH of 2. Remember, apple cider vinegar has a pH of 2.5 and honey has a pH of 2. Formic Pro has pH of 2. Oxalic acid used as a drizzle, that is, the formulation of oxalic acid that is used as a drizzle, has a pH of 1, which means it's 100 times more concentrated than anything with a pH of 2. Because pH is a logarithmic scale, and the lower it is, the more intense it is. So people drizzle oxalic acid directly on their bees, and it doesn't kill the bees. And that's 100 times more concentrated than vinegar. Okay? I think that pretty well means that you can't really hurt your bees spraying the bees with vinegar or spraying the comb and putting even the still wet comb back in there. Not practices I do, but since these things are coming up and there's confusion on it, I did a little bit of research on the topic, and this is what I've come up with. We really don't know if there's any benefit to spraying with vinegar. There might be in terms of damage to some virus particles. There is no indication, even by the guy who feels that it does good for him, that spraying his bees with apple cider vinegar does anything for the mites. That's pretty much what I wanted to say here today. We'll just wind it up. This is Rich. I use, I'm going to add this one thing to it. So the very, very, very famous bee researcher down in South America, in Venezuela, who, accidentally on his watch, it wasn't him who did it, but on his watch, the drones got out, and we now have our Africanized bees, our hybrids and such. But he was famous for a long time before that, and he was famous for a long time after that. And he was famous for saying that all bees can be worked with smoke and water. Fuma y agua, smoke and water. You can work any bee with enough smoke and water. Straight up water is what I always have nearby in the bee yard in case I needed to just push them around a little bit and I don't want to be using smoke to do it. If I want to push bees that are on the side of a box up and over and into the box, I'm going to use a little bit of smoke. If bees are boiling out too much, I'm going to use a little bit of water. Have I tried using water that has smoke in it yet? No, I haven't. But I made this the other day, and this is just straight up water. No, this is not, vinegar. I made some straight up water. I'm going to try it. Much more often, I'll use sugar water. And this isn't a 1-to-1 sugar water. This is, 3 or 4 tablespoons of water, or 3 or 4 tablespoons of sugar, rather, in some water. And that distracts any bee that gets sprayed with it. It's like, ooh, or, ooh, hey, you. It distracts them. It breaks their concentration and their focus on coming out to do something to you. So that's about it. I hope somebody found something useful in this or got the answer to a question that they were wondering about, because there's just a lot of things we don't really know the answers to. Experiment, see what works for you, find out if something does work for you on this, share it with us. It's like somebody shared the idea of putting white vinegar on my hands, and I haven't used gloves since then. But that's it. Like and subscribe. Have a great day, everybody.